Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for Fueling the Science Mind, Motivating Our Students with Eric Cross today. My name is Ryan, and I'm here from Amplify, and I'm just going to get us started today. I will do a few housekeeping notes, and then I'll kick things off to our speaker, Eric. But before that, I'm going to go ahead and give everybody just a couple minutes to join. So can everyone just go ahead and drop in the chat what's your name, where are you from, maybe what your role in education is, just to get us started. I'll drop my information in
Me too. Where am I? I'm in my office. I'm in San Diego. That's right. Here we go. All right. Huntsville, North Carolina representing. Jason's from North Carolina. Grosse Pointe, Michigan. Uh, Bakersfield. What's going on, California? New York City.
New York City is
Oh,
always representing these things.
right. Oh, we got Oakland, but in Chicago. Okay. All right. More North Carolina. Panama. We have our first international. Chicago, Minnesota, Costa Rica.
Oh, Dubai.
I've been to Costa Rica. I love it. I went to Arenal. Is that the volcano? Arenal? I think I went there in the cloud forest. It was great.
So cool.
What did you say? Wait, did you say Dubai?
Yeah, I did see Dubai.
What's going on Dubai?
No, very cool.
Lydia in the Bahamas. Like you say from the Bahamas, right? You're like, are you on the beach? Just like on a Zoom? Dark.
Okay. Well, I will go ahead and get us started again. Thank you all so much for joining us for Fueling the Science Mind, motivating our students with our speaker, Eric Cross. My name is Ryan, and again, I'm just going to get us started with a few housekeeping notes before we get started, so bear with me. If you would like to access closed captioning, please hit the CC button in the bottom tray to show subtitles. That'll pop up, and then Zoom will do closed captioning for you. We love participation in our webinars, so please feel free to participate in the chat. You can make those comments anytime. Eric's pretty good at keeping an eye on the chat, but if you have any questions that I can answer, I will answer those as well for you. But for overall, we will be using the Q&A function for this webinar. So if you have a question for Eric that you would like answered, and it's not something that he might be able to answer in the moment, please go ahead and drop that in the Q&A function, and we'll have some dedicated time for Q&A at the end of the webinar if time allows. You will receive a certificate of attendance from Zoom, as well as a webinar recording from us. So keep an eye out for those emails that will be coming to you shortly. And then with that being said, I'd love to introduce you all to Eric. In addition to being our host for Science Connections and then a co-host for Beyond My Years, Eric is also a seventh grade teacher and technology teacher. He's a grade level lead and he's the digital learning innovator at Albert Einstein's academies. So Eric is just so incredible. He does so much amazing work around like empowering leaders, so he's just so incredible. I love listening to Eric speak. You all are in for a treat today. With that being said, I'll go ahead and kick things off to you, Eric.
Thanks, Ryan. Good evening, everybody. If it's evening where you are, I don't know what it's like in Dubai, but if it's morning, good morning. But yeah, hey everyone. I just got out of my classroom, came home, and I'm really excited to do this session with you all. And I love the chat. This is so much fun. I'm gonna have to block it out though because I get so caught up in reading. Good evening from Mexico. It's good to see you. I'm glad you're here. Let me share my screen and let's see. Are we able to see that? And sound is good. And let's make sure we got everything. So chat. All right. All right, Ryan, are we looking good there?
Looks great.
Awesome, thank you. So welcome everyone. Again, my name is Eric Cross. I'm a middle school science teacher. This is my 11th year in the classroom full-time. I'm also an adjunct professor at the University of San Diego, teaching science methods, education technology for pre-service teachers out here. I posted Science Connections, and now I'm the co-host of In the Classroom Insider for Beyond My Years podcast with Ana Torres, which has been so much fun. The population I serve, my students, I have 200 students. I have 46 students that are English language multilingual learners. 35 of my students have special education plans or IEPs. 5 of my students have 504 plans, and 60% of my students are free and reduced lunch. This is just some context so you know what I'm teaching. I have 36 kids per class. This is what I just taught today. This is what I do every day and all day. My demographic of students, 75% Latino, 19% white, 2% Black, 2% Asian, and 2% multicultural. So I'm a very diverse school. And I teach one advisory course, which is kind of our check-in course with our kids in the beginning of the day. I teach 3 science classes a day, and then 1 elective design class, which is my flex period class. Now, I want to premise this. This is Fueling the Science Mind, engaging methods to motivate young thinkers. And we could do like a whole workshop on this that would last 8 to 5. But the goal of this is really to share some of the tips and ideas that I've used or gathered from educators like yourself. I am a collector of teaching tips like Pokemon. If I find a teacher that's doing something amazing, I want to do it. And so anything that I've done here are not things that I've necessarily invented. They're just things that I've maybe remixed or came up with along the way. Now, some things that I can't control directly, compensation, sorry, teachers, all of you, no matter if you're in the Bahamas or if you're in Arkansas, you all deserve to be paid more, coming from one of your own. External work environments, things that are happening outside. Coworker cynicism. I just got out of a meeting and I was talking to teachers that were having a hard time just hearing a lot of negativity, and that was draining on them. And the students that we serve whoever shows up at our school. We bloom where we're planted. And so whoever comes to our school, those are our kids. And those are things we can't control. What I can control is what happens inside my classroom, how I show up for my kids, my skill set, and my personal learning community. And one of the things that I picked up along the way was this phrase that situation plus response equals experience. And the situations I can't really control often. They just happen when you're teaching, no matter if you're kindergarten to 12th grade. But my response is something that I can control. And when I control my response, that determines my experience. And this is something that I share with students too, that just because something happens, I get to choose how I respond to it, and that's going to determine my experience. And so these are things that I kind of want to premise for as we move on. Now, I'm a science teacher and I'm inquiry driven, so I always like phenomena. So we're going to start off with one. Now, if you're on a phone, this is going to be tough to do, so you might just have to listen along. But if you have your phone handy, take your phone out, turn on the camera, and then just scan that QR code. Yeah, you didn't know you were actually going to be like doing something today, but you are. So take out your phone, scan the QR code, and if it shows up and you see a dot and a plus, if you could just let me know in the chat just to make sure everything's working okay. I'm going to try it on my phone too, just to make sure it works. So we should see, oh, good. Thanks, Robert. Awesome. Thank you, Ryan. So we're going to use that for this activity right now. So what you're looking for is you want to see something like this. That's what you're looking for. Now, if you didn't have your phone handy, I'll go back one more slide just so you can scan it really quickly. And we want this on our phone, if you can see it in the camera or not. And what we're going to do is we're going to cover our right eye. So cover your right eye, and then you're going to stare at the plus with your left eye, slowly moving the phone forward and backwards. So if I'm holding my eye like this, and then I have my phone here, I'm looking at the plus, and I'm moving the phone forward and back. And in my peripheral vision, pay attention to what happens to the dot. And if you notice something, drop it in the chat. So it's moving kind of forward. For me, it starts to happen around 4 inches from my face, maybe like 4 or 5 inches, maybe about right here, something happens. So let me see if anybody said anything in the chat. Yes, this works best with your phone and landscape. Thank you, Ryan. All right, I see it disappears. Was anyone else able to make that happen? All right, yeah, we see it's gone there. Nice, Robert says the dot disappears. Now, if you tap the slide on your phone, it'll actually switch and put the plus on the other side, and try it with your other eye. Same thing, but this time it'll be left eye closed, moving the phone back and forth until you can get that dot to disappear. See if you can make that happen. If you're not able to do it, that's okay. Even after the webinar, you'll be able to do it. And then we're going to drop a link in the chat that'll have everything that I cover here. And you'll be able to do this with your students too if you want to. So yeah, kind of move it in and out. For me, it's about 4 to 5 inches roughly for me to be able to make it disappear. Yeah, it's gone again. Now we're going to try a little different one now that we've done that. Okay, a lot of you are getting it to disappear. Now, if you're looking at the screen, you'll be able to do this with us. So what I want you to do is focus on the small black square right here in the middle of the screen. So there's a small black square there. Focus on that. And then right up here, in your peripheral vision, see what happens to the dot right up here. There's a little, I'm sorry, it's a gray box in the top right. So you're going to stare here, fix your focus on this black box, and then kind of pay attention to what happens to the gray box up here as this plays. So right now you're looking back at the computer screen, and we'll play it. All right, there it goes. So stare at that black square. Now that you're doing that, do you notice anything? Ah, there we go. So what gray box is gone? We'll let it play to the end. Stare at that gray box. Oh, I'm sorry, stare at the black box, and then now it's gone. So right now, this is what we ask as our favorite question to science teachers, right? Like, what do you notice and what do you wonder? Like, what do you notice happening, or what do you wonder about now that you've seen this happen? And imagine you're in that position as your students. Like, what's a wondering that you might have? Go ahead and drop it in the chat. It's a question that we would ask to see what's going on with our students. Maria, thank you for participating. Let's just give a few more seconds to see if anyone has a noticing or a wondering. So the screen's gone. Yeah, what's important? It changes to its grayscale. The first one was my optical nerve. It's all blurry. Yeah, what we're seeing here is we're actually detecting where our optic nerve meets our eyeball. We're finding that spot, and that's where we don't have those cells to be able to see things. And so we find that spot on there. And just like in life, in our bodies too, we have these blind spots. These are areas where just biologically, we just don't see certain things. We just can't. And we all have them. It's part of being human. And there are social blind spots too. There's just areas that we just don't see. And for those of us who are serving kids in the classroom, you have so many different students that you're serving every day. There are blind spots everywhere. And it's just part of being human. It's innate in us. Let's try another activity. Let's try a different one. So this time, I want you to think about, listen to this sound, and tell me what you think you're hearing. So what do you hear? What do you think you're hearing when you listen to this? So this is just auditory. Here we go.
That is embarrassing! 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 That is embarrassing!
All right, what do you think they're saying there? We have British footballers, we have soccer game chant. What might they be saying? What words do you think they're saying? Process in motion, all right. My mistake, this is embarrassing. Let me try it one more time. Let's try it one more time.
That is embarrassing! 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 That is embarrassing!
Now, were you able to hear Bart Simpson bouncing? Or rotating pirate ship? What about this isn't my receipt? Or lobsters in motion? Or my 7th grade student's favorite, lactates in pharmacy, like you do. I'm chasing Martian, baptism piracy, or that isn't mercy. What I want you to do is look at one of these lines, just look at one of them and read it, say that in your head, and I'm going to go back and play the song, play the music again, and see if you hear it. So go ahead and pick one of those lines. And then we'll go back one more time.
That is embarrassing! 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 That is embarrassing!
Yeah, so in that situation, you might even be able to hear something a little bit different. And what this is called is the McGurk effect. So it is a soccer chant. And what they're actually saying is that is embarrassing. So those of you who's heard that in the chat, you were correct. It is saying that is embarrassing over and over and over. That's a British soccer chant when their team was losing. You heard Bart is in Patterson. Oh, okay, yeah. I got that one in there too. So we take in stimulus like this and form a perspective, and sometimes it's accurate and sometimes it's not. It's part of being human. And we do the same with our students, and they do the same with us. And for us as teachers, it's important for us to be thermostats and not thermometers for our students in the classroom. And the difference between the two is that in my house, my thermostat controls the temperature. And that's like my job as a teacher, is to control the climate and temperature and culture of my classroom. See, a thermometer just responds to the temperature. And if I don't create it, my students will. If I don't create the culture that I want, my students will create it for me. And for me, teaching seventh graders, the culture that they create just organically isn't necessarily the culture that I want for like deep science learning. It might be funny, but it'll probably be chaotic. And so being that thermostat in the classroom is really essential. And so how do we do that? One of the ways is signaling. And when we think about our space in the classroom, what messages do our classroom spaces communicate? And now when I went to school, classroom spaces for me in science were very sterile. It was science equipment, Erlenmeyer flasks, eye wash stations in the shower, which I always wanted to use because the shower was right there on right there in the middle of the classroom. So I always wanted to pull it, but it was like the forbidden handle. We always want to do things we're not supposed to, like the red button, don't push it. But there wasn't a lot of visuals. I didn't feel connected to my science classroom. I didn't realize how important that was until I became a teacher. And so I have just some snapshots of my own classroom. And so in the classroom, you can see a variety of different things. You have my gigantic Home Depot 12-foot skeleton in the background. If you see right back here, you see my giant skeleton that I put in front of my house on Halloween. My students are facing each other for collaboration. We have different types of scientists on the walls of my students and some graffiti art that my students had created throughout the years. Here we have our word wall with key learning concepts from our curriculum that I've done that my students can always refer back to. Some diagrams. I always get that question, when is school out, or when is this class done? Teachers, have you ever got that question before? When is this class over? You ever get that one? And it kind of stings a little bit, right? Like when they ask you, yeah, okay, I'm not the only, thank you. There's at least two of us that get that question sometimes. So right up here next to the clock, I put the bell schedule so students can always get up there and look at it. That's a fair question. But in the classroom, I want it to be a place where students see themselves and they feel like they're connected. In the back, we have our animals back there and some of our lab supplies and things like that. And one of the biggest reasons why I wanted to do this is because there's a difference between belonging and fitting in. And many of the students, and including myself, have spent their lives trying to fit in, but never felt like they belong. And there's a difference, especially if you're from a place where you typically don't see students that are like you, or you're in an environment where you don't see, you haven't had people that did STEM growing up or in your family. It might not feel like a place that you belong because you're not familiar with it. And I can tell the difference with students who might be the first person to graduate high school or middle school in their family, and my students who have parents that are scientists. I can just see in motivation and comfort level. And so I want to create an environment my students feel like they belong. And Brene Brown had a great kind of quip on this, or quote on this, and I'll play this video where she talks about it.
I was so shocked to learn in the research that the opposite of belonging is fitting in. Because fitting in is assessing a group of people and thinking, who do I need to be? What do I need to say? What do I need to wear? How do I need to act? And changing who you are. And true belonging never asks us to change who we are. It demands that we be who we are. Because if we fit in because how we've changed ourselves, that's not belonging. That's not belonging, because you betrayed yourself for other people. And that's not sustainable.
have you ever felt like you had to fit in an environment versus actually belong? Have our students ever felt like that? That's a question that I ask myself. I know what it's like to feel like you have to fit in. There's always different situations where I do, but how is that for a student? And when we ask our students to do things like science talks and argumentation and develop literacy, all of these require risks. They require students to be vulnerable. And in a space where you don't feel like you belong, where you just are trying to fit in, the last thing you want to do, especially for a middle school student, is to embarrass yourself or to put yourself out there. Um, One of the ways we're able to do this and help students feel like they belong is by creating mentors. And some research came out a couple of years ago about high schoolers who reported having a natural mentor were 12 to 26% more likely to go to college than kids who didn't have a natural mentor. Now, a natural mentor would be like that, their favorite teacher or that go-to person. You know how students kind of adopt you? You have that one kid that you're more than a teacher to them. Like they kind of find their way to gravitate towards you, like your gravity or they orbit you wherever you go. They're kind of there. They kind of just show up. That's almost like a natural mentoring relationship where they've kind of chosen you, or that student that you kind of have reached out to, that student that you just feel that connection with and you're really trying to invest into them. Those would be types of natural mentor relationships. The reality is that only 15% of kids report having a natural mentor in high school. And the number was even lower for students that are of low socioeconomic status. And in California, where I live in my state, surveys found that less than 60% of ninth graders reported ever having a caring relationship with an adult outside of maybe a parent. And it's been the same for about the past 10 years. Now, I know we're all over the world here, and I know everybody's different, but for where we are, at least where I am, this is something that really resonates with me. And some of the findings that came out of some of this research was that students with a stronger sense of belonging were 1.5 times more likely to contribute ideas in class. So they were more likely to speak up, more likely to participate. Students who had a higher average of belonging were more likely to contribute. And then there was a clear relationship between belonging and contributing for students who initially had a lower sense of belonging. So students who started to feel more like they belonged to the classroom as time went on, they participated more. Now I want to go back to like younger me. So this is a picture of the Flying Tigers. The Flying Tigers were a group of African-American fighter pilots in World War II for the US. And they were one of the first groups. And when I was in high school, I was a pilot. My high school had a flight program. It was an aeronautics program that my teacher ran. And he made it a point to inform me about the Flying Tigers. Now, my flight instructor didn't look like me. We weren't from the same background or anything like that, but he knew that belonging was important. He knew that students seeing themselves in certain environments was in places that they wanted to be was really, really important. And a couple of years ago, actually, no, not a couple of years ago, a couple months ago, I got a text message, and the text message said, "Hey, is this Crisscross?" Now, my name's Eric Cross, and nobody's called me Crisscross since I was in high school. And Crisscross was my call sign. Now, if you're not familiar with flying culture, when you're a pilot, you get a call sign. If you've ever seen Top Gun, there's like Goose and Maverick and all those kind of nicknames. That's a normal thing in flying culture. And so when I was a pilot, I was Crisscross. My flight instructor gave me that name because my last name's Cross. And I went on and flew in high school, and then I graduated. And my flight instructor was a major mentor for me. And about 3 months ago, I got a text message saying, "Is this Crisscross?" And I said, "Yes, who is this?" And I said, "This is Pat. I graduated about 2 years after you. And I wanted you to know that our flight instructor, Mr. Klun, had passed away a couple years ago. And I was at his house helping his wife and helping his widow collect some things. And I went through a photo album. And in that photo album were these pictures of you. And these are pictures of you when you were 16 years old and you soloed for the first time in your life." And he had these pictures in his album. And I received that while I was sitting in my classroom, looking at my phone where my students were just leaving. And I received these photos that I hadn't seen since I was in high school. And I also just found out that one of my major mentors had passed away. And at that point, I realized the impact of what he was to me, and then now what I was to my students. And why I really thrived in that environment of flying is because I felt like I belonged with him. These pictures are the only pictures I have. And so I show these to you. That's 16, 17-year-old Eric Cross. When I first soloed, I flew by myself that Cessna 3 times. I took off and landed. And it was one of the most stressful things, but one of the biggest achievements of my life when I was a young person. And so I share that story because these are the stories that we don't often hear as teachers. And as my teacher never heard the story, Mr. Clun never heard about it. He never knew about the impact that he made on my life. But because he made me feel like I belong, he gave me the courage to do things I didn't think I could do. And he opened doors for me I never thought I would be able to walk through. And now I'm a teacher because of it. So we do the same for our students. It happens all the time. So how do we do that? Well, one of the ways is to create connection before content. And so I start off with community agreements in the classroom. These are a few, and I'll share these in the doc, but having students engage as a learner, these are all things that we do. And I know many of you right now in your classrooms, you have students come up with class norms and class rules. It's kind of a staple as a teacher to do. It's a great way for everyone to kind of be on the same page. When you have student voice contribute to that, you get a lot more buy-in. Next, after I share my story, I have a Google form that I share with students. And I put this form in the doc that I'll share with everyone, and feel free to remix it. And in this form, there's all kinds of different questions that I ask. Some questions are soft questions about, what's your favorite, sport? What are you good at? Do you have computer access at home? They fill it all out. And by the time they're done, I have a spreadsheet about all of my students. What are your favorite hobbies? Who do you look up to and why? What's the hardest thing you've ever done? And there's one question that I always put on there, which is, what are you good at? And I always look for a certain answer. And the answer that I look for is when a student says nothing. When a student says nothing, I go through and I highlight that. I highlight the little cube that's in there, the little cell, because I know that that student needs a version of me as a teacher that other students might not. That student's telling me that my self-efficacy is low and I need to be built up, or I need to see the great things that I have inside me. Now, by the time I'm done with this, I have data for 100 to 200 students. And you can do this at any point in time in the semester. It's great to do it in the beginning of the school year, but if you've already established yourself in the classroom, you can still do this and let students know, and let them know this might inform how you teach future lessons. Hey, I want to know if you're really into football, you play soccer, you play cricket. If I have a lot of students that do that, maybe I can talk about my units through that lens. If I'm talking about forces in motion, I want to talk about it in a way that's relevant to my students and their interests. Next, Friday shout outs with all teachers. Now, this is more for secondary teachers, but anyone can do this. And this is a low lift, high value activity that it's shocking how many times this doesn't happen. So every Friday we have a team meeting and we go over logistics. We have team meeting notes and parent teacher conferences and IEP meetings and all of these different things. But one of the things that is essential that I will not lead a meeting without is bringing in 1 to 2 students to praise them. Students oftentimes hear the things that they need to work on and improve, but they don't often hear the things they're doing right. And so what we do is we bring them in and they sit down and they think they're in trouble. It's the best. They come in there, why am I? All the teachers are there, all of us. And we tell them, hey, we wanted to call you in. You've been crushing it this week, or you've been doing an amazing job. Or all of us have been talking about students that stood out. You were the one that we all agreed on that we wanted to bring in today. And we sit down, and it's about 5 minutes, and every teacher goes by about 30, 40 seconds, and they share their message of appreciation, specific, targeted, brief, right to the point. Hey, this is what I appreciate about you. I just want to thank you, because when students sit next to you, that student becomes better no matter who sits next to you. I see you and I appreciate you so much. You make teaching so fulfilling. When students hear that from all of their teachers at the same time, it is amazing what happens to them. And it's really interesting what happens too. Students who are not used to hearing that can become very stoic. Students who are hungry for it can just beam. And students who've been feeling unseen can just break and start crying. They can just start saying, like, this means so much to me. And then afterwards, we follow up and we just call their parent at the end of the day. Quick 5-minute phone call. Hey, mom, dad, we called your son or daughter in. Here's what we said. We just wanted to say we appreciate you. Thank you so much. And then we move on. And we do that every Friday. Eventually, you get throughout the school year, a lot of students. And you know what it also does for teachers? Because look, right now, at least where I'm at, teachers are tired. We're in this 3 weeks before a break. For us, it's almost the winter break. Folks are like trying to just hang in there. They're like, whatever we could do. And there's so many things to be cynical about in education. There just are. It's a hard job to do. But there's this quote that says, like, it's better to light a candle than to curse the darkness. There's so much darkness you can curse. But when you're around people that just, they're the helpers. They're the ones that like, yeah, it's kind of like it's a Monty Python quote, but there's this knight in Monty Python, and he keeps getting his arms and legs cut off, but he never quits. He just keeps going. And those of you who are like deep science nerds, like you probably know about the Monty Python sketch. But it's like that, like the ones that just keep going and they understand that this effort is worth it. And you know why? It's because oftentimes they have people alongside them that are doing it too, but it is so hard to do it alone. And when you start off your day doing this with students, oh my gosh, it empowers you to finish out that Friday strong because you just started off so positive. And that brings me to the next activity. Now, if you don't have a Google Voice number, I highly encourage you to get one. This is my burner phone number. It's free, doesn't cost anything. If you have a Gmail account, you can make one. This is the number that I contact parents on. And what I do with parents in the beginning of the school year, but you can do this anytime, is I make 3 to 5 phone calls on my drive home. So instead of me listening to the newest Kendrick Lamar album that I've been listening to lately, I might get on the phone and I'm strategically calling 3 to 5 parents. And the messages are all positive phone calls. And you know who I'm looking for especially? I'm looking for that student that teachers might have warned you about in previous years, or the student that might be struggling in other classes, because I want to make a deposit. I want to find something that's been positive. So I give the call. Hey, Mr. and Mrs. Smith, this is Eric Cross. This is Deshaun's teacher. Hey, I just wanted to let you know today in science, we were doing a lab and Sean was super engaged. He was taking photos, he was collecting data. He completed everything on time and he was helping his partner. He really seems like he has a real knack for science. I just wanted to say how much I appreciate him and thank you for sending him to our school. Is there anything that I can do to be a better teacher for him? You know him best. You raised him. What are some things that I might not know that if I did know, it would really help me serve him better? Now, when you call a parent that has never got a positive phone call home, you'll often get this. Did you call the right number? Did you get the right parent? Which is the best. And it can lead into a great conversation. Or my favorite, you get a voicemail and you just leave the voicemail and you get through another call. You still get the benefit because what happens the next day is the student comes in oftentimes and they say, hey, Mr. Cross, hey, did you call my mom yesterday? Yeah, I called your mom. Hey, she told me, she said I did some good things and I got to play video games for an extra hour that night. So, all right, cool. Hey, you owe me. Remember that, you got that extra hour. You owe me. I'm going to need to call back this favor at some point in time. Remember, I'm going to need it. Okay, Mr. Cross, I got you. Okay, Mr. Cross, I got you. You know, I learned that from The Wire, the show The Wire. But again, you're kind of making this relationship and you're building an ally with a parent because your first contact with a parent was positive. How many times have parents had the first contact with a teacher be negative and it's an email where there's no tone? Even though we like to insert tone in the email, you know, we insert kind of like our brains as humans, like kind of snarky tones sometimes. But when you've had that first conversation and it's been positive, now if there's ever a time where you do have to call for correction or redirection or inform because of something negative, they already know that you see the best in their child. And it's a simple tactic, but it goes so far. And now I walk around with my phone in the classroom oftentimes, and I'm not text messaging. What I'm doing is taking photos. So I'll have my phone available and I'll take photos of students doing amazing things. You know what parents never see? They never see photos of their kids in real-time learning. Like, think about it. Like, how many times do you see pictures of those of you who have kids, of your own kid actually doing learning in the classroom, or let alone a video? Imagine if you were at work and the teacher sent you a text message or sent you an email of just saying, hey, wanted you to see, Markel doing a lab where he's feeding the turtle. He's been doing so great. Or here's one where he's doing a cup building activity or an engineering activity and leading his team. So impressed with this kid right now. Just wanted you to see that. They get that email, they open it up, and it's amazing. I've heard so many stories from students about their parents sending those messages in the group chat for their families, emailing it out to different people. And again, it's a simple thing, but it's not always front of mind for us. But it's a simple thing that we can do that, again, helps students feel like they belong. Moving on is identity slides. So one of the ways that I get to know my students is creating identity slides. We do this in Google Slides, or you can use Canva. And all students have to do is create a slide that represents them. One of the rules that I have is it has to have your name and it has to have our school logo. And through this, we have different students. I always go first as a teacher, because I always think if we're going to ask our kids to be vulnerable about anything, we should always go first. Again, it's that us being the thermostat, not the thermometer. And so I'm going to share first and show you like what I care about, and then you guys go. And these are just a few examples of students over the years that have made different things, and it's fun to see what memes are trending over time. There's all kinds of funny things, and I just want to pause here for a second because this is a story that resonates deep in my heart. Now, this student has graduated high school by now. He was my 7th grader. When he was in 6th grade, his parents were in a car accident and they were both killed by a drunk driver. They were on a motorcycle and a drunk driver hit them and they passed away at the scene. And this happened to him in 6th grade. And at that time, he became selective mute. He stopped talking. So he was raised by his grandmother. And he came into my class and I heard the story. When he came into 8th grade, I heard what happened. And he was in my advisory class, he was in my science class. And I didn't get a lot out of him as far as talking. He participated, he was very sweet, very kind. I was still me and doing all of these different things that I'm talking about. But just sometimes you don't know if you're reaching someone or if you're connecting. You don't know, because sometimes our kids keep things close to the chest. And that's understandable. And at the end of the semester, I got a letter. And I still have the letter. And the letter said, it's very simple, but it says, Mr. Cross, you remind me of my dad because you make me laugh. Thank you for being my science teacher. And there aren't a lot of times where I cry, just in life in general, or like because of these situations, but that was one that broke me. Like that was one that hit my heart so hard, because I never knew the impact that I was making with him. And over time, he started to work through his grief and be able to open up and became successful in high school. And it wasn't any one activity that did it, but it was the accumulation of these activities that were creating culture for our kids. Okay, so that's a lot of heart. Now you're like, Cross, this is a science thing. Like, how do we get into science and how do we do some science things? Okay, let's do a few things that are directly science related that we can do. And this is something that I'm doing with my students right now. So writing is a big one. How do we practice having our students write like a scientist? And here's a fun one, and you can do this with me or just watch me do it. Writing can be challenging, just like reading, but we're all teachers of literacy, and coming up with creative ways to be able to do it can be a challenge. And then if you're secondary, trying to get your English teachers to do interdisciplinary stuff, depending on your relationship with them, can be easy or it can be really challenging. So you got to kind of sell it. So here's one tool that I use, and this is called Say What You See. And this is Google's experiment. And I'm going to kind of demonstrate it for you. And again, the links are going to be in the Fueling Science Mind document that we share to show you how to do this. But I'm going to go ahead and demonstrate this. Let me get out of my slides and switch over to Say What You See. It doesn't cost anything. If you have internet and you don't need to log in or anything like that, we're going to launch the experiment. And what it does when we click Let's Begin. By the way, I just want to give a shout out to the chat. If anybody hasn't seen it, there's some great dialogue going on in there. And this is a good time to say, if you have strategies or resources that you're doing, please drop in the chat, because we literally have people from all over the world right now that are exchanging ideas. Like we are a pop-up PLC right now. That's what I'm going to call this. Like we're a pop-up PLC. It's like all of a sudden, we're all here. We all serve kids. We're all about science. If you have ideas, share those in the chat. Okay. That's my PSA. All right, so say what you see. So can someone describe this for me, like this picture? Would you mind dropping in the chat, like what you see for level 1 on the left-hand side? Like, what is that? And it's 5:10 right now in San Diego, and I am hungry. Joshua said ramen. Good. So on the right-hand side, what you need to do is write it with as much detail as possible, because what it's going to use is it's going to use AI to generate an image. So this is going to teach students how to write prompts, but they have to be descriptive. Now, you might be able to see where I'm going with this. So this is a bowl. What do we got? Okay. Abigail said ramen soup with green vegetables and half an egg. Okay, I'm just going to copy what you said there, Abigail, in the chat. And we're going to paste it here. That is not what I wanted. So now I'm gonna have to type it. All right. Ramen with green vegetables and half an egg in a bowl. Now, if I can generate it close enough, I pass. Now, this is level 1. It's pretty easy. Okay, I got 83% match. It generated the image. So now I'm going to go to next. I'm so glad this came up. This is the great equalizer. How would you describe this? How would your students describe this? Here's what I saw. This is not exaggerating. My students were so engaged in wanting to do this, they were asking for vocabulary words. What is this called when the color changes like this? What are these colors called? How do I describe it? I'm like, that's great. Ask the person next to you. What are they doing? They're becoming technical writers. They're organically building their vocabulary. They learn the word ombre, O-M-B-R-E, ombre. Is that how you say it? Maybe somebody can correct me. Yeah, ombre, like they learned that word in this discussion. And I'm just watching them do this. Now, in this, I might say a fade from top to bottom, going from, what is that first color? I don't know, like a mint to guava. Now I'm kind of typing what my students would write. Now, if it generates it, oh, I got a 17% match. So now I have to do it again. And so they go back and they do it again. Now, they're doing this, and what are they doing? They're practicing writing. They're practicing their observation skills. They're practicing being descriptive in their adjectives. They're using vocabulary terms. Now, is it science focused? No, not necessarily. This is something that is a skill. This is a skill they're developing. Are they learning content through it? No. But what they're doing is they're building their skills of saying what they see. Now, when we're doing labs and they're making observations, that's exactly what they do. Now, when I ask my kids a question and I say, be descriptive, oftentimes their definition of descriptive is 1 to 3 words. That is not descriptive. This rewards you for being descriptive. So we start here and we do this, and I'll give them this much, like, I don't know, 10 minutes to do this. There's 9 levels. I don't let them finish. I cut them off while they're still high on the engagement. They're like, oh, I want to keep going. I want to keep going. And then we stop. And then we move on with the lesson. We do this as a warm up. We practice it. Now, phase 2 of this, I'll do with a different activity. This is the most dangerous writing app. Now, again, what am I doing? My low-key thing, I'm trying to get my students to write. I'm trying to get my students to write and be comfortable and also be engaged. So with this, and I'll do this on a different day. I won't do it the same day. I'm going to do this over the course of a week. I can start writing without a prompt, which is what I do. I can also change the amount of time they have to write for. So I'm going to do 3 minutes when I start with my students, and then I'm going to kind of like tease them. I'm going to say, you could do hardcore mode, but I don't recommend it unless you're like, you really like a challenge. And here's what you have to do. So when you click start writing without a prompt, you have to write nonstop. And if you stop for like 7 to 10 seconds, it deletes everything you wrote. So what kind of prompt do I give them? I give them a science prompt. We just talked about hemophilia. It's one of the articles in the Amplify lesson for traits of reproduction. Talks about a missing protein. I say, write about a time where you got a scab. And they're like, what? I go, yeah, write about a time you got a scab. Or make up a story about someone who got a scab. They're like, okay, I'm going to do that. So I'm going to click start writing without a prompt. Here we go. One day I was riding, I'm making this up as I go, riding my bike, and I fell on a, oh man, I fell on a, what did I fall on? Oh, what's happening? Watch, oh, it's gone. Man, it disappeared. So if you keep writing the entire time, it'll save everything you wrote. So what it forces students to do is just keep going. What it sounds like in the classroom, at least in my experience and the teachers that I've shared it with, it sounds like a bunch of kids hacking the CIA. Because it's all tippity-tappity, tippity-tappity, tippity-tappity. They just keep going. And what does it do? It eliminates writer's block. It's collaborative, but it's also competitive because you're competing against yourself. Now, again, we're practicing that skill of helping our students write and be descriptive. Now, I know some of you are wondering, like, what is hardcore mode? Well, hardcore mode is if you start this and you do hardcore mode, and you click start writing without a prompt, here's what it does. One day I was riding my bike and I fell. Now it only shows you one letter at a time and you can't see your spelling. So it blocks that out for the students who are so kind of like worried about spelling things correctly. It's not the first thing that I'm worried about in science, as long as they're getting their ideas out and they're communicating it. So that's number 2. So we have say what you see, and then we have the writing prompt generator, the most dangerous writing app. Now I share both these tools with our teachers, the English teachers, and the English teachers love using it because it's getting the kids to write. It's helping them practice descriptive writing. It's helping them practice their vocabulary and using new terms. The last activity that I do from here is an activity that I've borrowed from a competition in the US called Science Olympiad. And Science Olympiad is a competition where groups of students from across the country kind of compete. But what they need to do is you give two students. So let's say Ryan and I are at the same desk. We put up a privacy board between us. I'm one student with a privacy board. Ryan can't see me, and Ryan's on the other side. And I give him maybe, we both have a bunch of Kinects, or we both have a bunch of Legos, or we both have a bunch of like gumdrops and, toothpicks, whatever, things that you can make stuff with. My job, I'm going to make something. And Ryan has the tools too. He has the same one, the same tools, but he hasn't made anything. He's just waiting for me. So I make something, maybe something like this contraption down here. And then I have to write step by step how to make it, because I'm going to hand that paper to Ryan, and Ryan has to make it without seeing what I made. So it's all procedural technical writing. Let's say in the chat, say they'd have to write quickly and accurately. I always say we're gonna go for effort. Yeah. So the fun part about this is you time it, and in the resources, I gave a whole explanation to a website that has the whole write it, do it activity. When the time ends, you have both students hold up the model and then the design based on the instructions. And it's wild what they do with each other. Like when they're the same, they're like high-fiving. When they're different, they're like, what happened? And this is something that you could do like every week. It could be a practice, and you could switch up what the materials are. They could be pipe cleaners and styrofoam cups. They could be ping pong balls and tape. It doesn't matter. You could do this with whatever you have access to. Having one student build the thing, random, they write down the procedures, exactly how to build it, color, shape, size, step by step, and then they give it to the other student to make it using just the same parts, but they can't see the actual model. So this is a fun tool to get students to be able to write, to develop their informational literacy, to develop their technical writing. And you can do this with anything that you have in the classroom. And it's a lot of fun for students. Now, as we wind down, I'm going to share just a couple more tools that I'm using that I've been experimenting with kids in our classroom. So the first one, years ago, during COVID, when I was teaching, I put my videos online on YouTube. Now, I don't have my videos public because I don't have the confidence level to deal with YouTube chats. Oh, I'm sorry, YouTube like comments. I'm not trying to be like out there fully. I don't mind doing podcasts. I don't mind doing all those things or talking, but I'm not trying to see the YouTube comments, because if you've read the YouTube comments, boy, like you gotta have some incredible resiliency, and I don't need my therapy bills to be that high. But I do have them for my students. They're unlisted. They can see all the videos, and it's just me doing direct instruction to my students. But occasionally I'll get students who speak multiple languages, or they don't speak English at all. And so what I've been able to use is a tool called HeyGen.
Aktivität 4.
And what HeyGen does is it will clone my voice and then duplicate me saying it. And so you might have to have your volume up for this one, but this is me speaking German, which I don't speak at all, except for a couple words. This is me speaking German, but you're going to hear it in my voice. So let me go ahead and play it.
Aktivität 4, schreiben Sie es über Elisa. Ja, sie ist immer noch hier. Wir müssen über sie reden. Also aus der letzten Aktivität ist das Schlüsselkonzept die große Idee, dass Zellen wachsen und sich selbst reparieren können, indem sie Aminosäuremoleküle kombinieren, um größere Proteinmoleküle zu bilden. Dieses Wachstum und diese Reparatur erfordern Energie. Und Ihr Körper bezieht diese Energie aus der Zellatmung. Das ist also eine große Idee aus dem letzten Thema. Es ist
Anyone
eine, die
able
dir
to
sicherstellen
understand the
möchte, dass
German?
sie sich
Anyone,
vollständig
everyone
mit
speak
ihnen
German in here? Able to
Zurück zu
understand
Elisa.
it?
Elisa hatte Diabetes. Das war der Zustand, den sie hatte, weshalb sie die ganze Zeit müde war. Und Diabetes ist eine medizinische Erkrankung. Sie führt dazu, dass sie wenig
Now, thanks, Brian. I want to take a step further. So right now it looks like an old Bruce Lee movie where my mouth is dubbed. I use a different program called HeyGen to speak Portuguese, but I want you to notice the difference this time.
Ei, professores! Vamos falar sobre o futuro da educação científica e adotar a IA para melhorar a aprendizagem dos alunos e facilitar suas vidas. Eu sou Eric Cross, professor de ciências e apresentador do podcast Science Connection. Hoje vou mostrar a você 4 maneiras. Ei, professor!
So
Ei, professores!
I don't speak,
Ei, professor!
I don't speak Portuguese either. But in that case, you can see that my mouth matched what I was saying. Now, to do that video, it took me 5 minutes. And all I did is took a video that I did in English and then dubbed it into Portuguese. Now, imagine I did this with my lessons. So I took my lessons, and then I had a student who came from the Ukraine, or I had a student that came from Brazil, or I had a student that came from China. I would be able to clone and dub my voice, and they could watch my videos of me doing instruction in their native tongue, in their mother tongue. And so it would be a lot easier for them to be able to access my instruction as I'm also developing their English literacy alongside that. So this is a simple tool that I've been able to use with students, and then I just post it on our learning management system so they can access it. So these are just a couple things that we can do. Now, we're down to 6 minutes, and I'm going to share one more tool with you. I'm not going to demonstrate it, but I am going to share it with you. It's going to be a fun one. This is, if there's anyone that's like really, really fun, this is going to be the one that you're going to want to play with. Actually, you know what? I'm going to demonstrate it. I can hang out if there's time. I don't want to hold Ryan for too long, though. This is an app called Suno. You might have seen it before. If you haven't, it generates music using AI, and the music is good. It's not bad. It's actually good. If you've never used this before, you got to check it out. So let's go ahead and do this. We're going to make a song. Let's make a song about we're going to make we need a genre of music. Can I get a genre of music, chat? Can we get a genre of music? Like, first one, I'm going to get the first person. Yeah, okay. Ska. All right, we're going to make a ska song. I need science content. So I need a ska song. This feels like whose line is it anyways? Ska song, I need science content though. About what? Cells. Okay, this is great. So a ska song about cells. Anything specific? Cells and the rock cycle. Cells and the rock cycle. All right, we're going to go ahead and create the song. Now this app is free, by the way, and it'll create 2 songs per prompt. This is a fun one. Like, I use this in my personal life. It's a lot of fun. All right, so we have 2 being generated. I have all kinds of, I have Cheeto fingers. These are all things that I've made in the past. And while that's going, what it's going to do is generate lyrics, the music, the cover art, the whole thing. And the reason why I'm showing you this is you could do this with your students. You could have students generate music. You could generate music that's goofy and silly, or generate music that's like a lot of fun. Having the students do it is a lot of fun, but doing it for them and making a whole playlist is awesome. So let's say it's like really, really busy. Okay, so, and I'm going to drop this in the chat just in case while we're waiting, anybody wants to be able to do this. They're on. Let's see. Of course, I'm doing this live. Can we get a copy of the slides of the webinar? Claudette, what I'll do is I'll put a link to my slides in that document. So the document that Ryan's sharing, the Fueling the Science Mind one, I'll put a link to that, and I'll put the slides right there in there too, so that you can refer back to the Canvas slides that are there. All right, this is taking a minute, so I don't want us to hold us up too long, but I am excited. I'm really curious about what song it comes up with right now. Let me see if I have one for. Let's see, what's the Cheeto Fingers one? Mindful Waves. 1%, the distractions. These are all songs that my students have come up with. Let's see, Animals and Plant Defenses, How to Survive. me try this again. Stop song about cells and the rock cycle. Oh, there it goes. Oh, wait. Oh, a clip got stuck while generating. Okay, that happens sometimes. We'll create one more. Resilience. Yeah, and sometimes it'll glitch or it'll just be delayed and you just have to create another one. Can you drop the chat names of the apps again? Please, such great ideas. Yeah, let's do, here you go. Let me drop this. Here are the resources. There you go. There we go. Okay, here we go. Wait, is this in Spanish? I didn't ask it to do it in Spanish. So it also does it in Spanish. Oh, no, that's an older song. Okay. All right, so I'm gonna play this song because the other ones, it might just be because it's overloaded right now. This is a song I had my students play. It's called Cheeto Fingers. So they made an electric EDM song about Cheeto Fingers because my kids eat Cheetos and Takis like they're one of the 4 food groups. I don't know if you have students like this, but like this, they survive on Takis and then they try to touch my keyboards and then it's like Taki dust and Cheeto dust on my, oh my gosh, I'm getting triggered right now. Let me play the song.
Orange just lingers on my fingertips, slacking on the couch, can't resist those chips. Every crunch so blissful, crumbs scare on my teeth, hands all stained and salty. Got no shame, you see. Cheeto fingers dance.
All right, there you go. You can see that. Oh, here we go. Cells Rock and Revolt. It actually finished. Here's our song. I got one more. Okay, we got our song generated. Let's listen to it.
Little cells in the dark they define. Rock cycle spins with nowhere to hide. From nucleus to sedimentary shift. Metamorphic dance, no chance to drift. From lava flow to solid stone. Life forms in a curious tone. Cells in veins like rivers run. Rock face mirrors what we've begun. Tell me why does the earth keep turning? Cells and rocks forever churning. Future birth formation dreams. Endless cycle bursting seams.
All right, we'll stop right there. Okay, folks, I hope there was something in there that was good for you. Again, this is like fueling the science mind, getting students engaged and interested. I hope some of those tools or one of them would be something that you can use with your kids. These are literally things that I'm doing this semester with my students to just make science engaging, fun, active, relevant. Remix these things, take them, share them, come up with your own ideas, say you made them up, bring them back to your school, share them with your PLC, say I was sitting at home and I came up with this idea, and claim it. Like it's totally fine. But I hope that the hour that you spent here was something that created value for you. Ryan, were there any questions? I know there's only like a minute or two left.
Yes, we did have one person that asked, do you have any go-to engagement strategies that do not involve the computer?
Yeah, so yes, I do. The first one that comes to mind is just what I do every Monday, which is weekend updates, where we go around the classroom and students get to share. It's very structured, so only the student who's speaking gets to talk. So weekend updates would be one where they get to talk about whatever they did over the weekend. This is a way to kind of build culture and community in the classroom. Some of these things can be done like low tech, like identity slides. It could be drawings instead of actually using Google Slides. A lot of these can be adapted if you're not using computers. It's a good question. I guess it would be a whole other session where I talk about the things that we do where we're not using tech, because if you don't have tech or you don't have Wi-Fi or you just don't want your kids on computers, there's a whole myriad of things that we could do. And what I could do is, if you have the chat, if you have the doc, what I could do is grab some things. Like I think I have a Google folder of ideas and I can put that into the doc. So just maybe check it in a couple days and I can add resources in there.
So great. Thank you, Eric. that was our only question. So I'm going to go ahead and just close this out with a few other resources. Thank you all so much for joining us. You know, we really appreciate you taking your time out of your busy schedule. I know for some of you it's 8:30 in the evening, so we appreciate your incredible participation. In order to access some more resources, we have an awesome digital science classroom poster right now that focuses on We Are Science Champions. It's a classroom poster and a student activity as well, all for free for you to download and print out for your classrooms. To access that, go to amplify.com/science champions poster. If you would like additional free resources, some incredible stuff that we have, you can access some of our best resources that we've had at amplify.com/science free resources. And if you'd like to learn more and check out Amplify Science, head over to amplify.com/science. It was so wonderful to have all of you here today. We appreciate your time. But I think we'll go ahead and sign off. Thank you, Eric.
Thanks, everybody. Have a great rest of the week.
Bye.
Great winter. Take care. Thanks, Ryan.